fadila, one virtue of knowledge. Now there is a famous hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam, and there's a very, very famous hadith. There are many different versions. I'll just read one to you. He alayhi salatu wasalam, he said, "Man salaka tariqan yatlubu al-ilm," whoever sets out on a path to seek knowledge, salaka Allahu bihi tariqan min turuq al-jannah. Allah will find a path for that person to reach Jannah. Or Allah will find a path for that person to reach Jannah. And then he says, إِنَّ الْمَلَائِكَةَ لَتَضَعُ أَجْنِحَتَهَا رِضَى لِطَالِبِ الْعِلْمِ. While the student of knowledge, the person who's seeking knowledge, whether boy or girl, man or woman, while they're on that path, Allah will ensure that the angels cover them or protect them, or the angels lower their wings over them to protect them while they're on that path. So this is, from this hadith, just we can see the sacredness in knowledge. The sacredness in knowledge, in seeking knowledge. We can see that it's a path that takes one to paradise. It's a path of knowledge takes one to paradise. Allah Himself is guaranteeing that the person who sets out to study knowledge, to study ilm, Allah will ensure that that person reaches heaven. The other thing as well is that setting out on a path means it's hard. It's not easy. It's not going to be a walk in the park to learn knowledge. It's a tariq. It's a road. Roads are rocky, they're bumpy, they're difficult. Even when we're going on a journey, journeys are difficult. Even people getting, even look at the traffic on the roads, atrocious, London roads. Getting on a journey home is difficult. I don't know if you know about the C2C trains, yeah? They've changed the time, well, I think from Monday they're going to change the timetable. But there's been some minor changes already and computers are complaining. Commuters are complaining that, oh my God, it was good before, look at it now, we can't make our journeys into Essex. Yeah? So even a journey, that road home can be difficult. So what do you think about studying, where you have to devote yourself, give time, apply yourself? And most of us, I presume, either in school, college, maybe at university or beyond, have studied. It's not easy, especially exam time. Yeah? So seeking knowledge is a sacred thing because it's to do with Allah, it's connecting to Allah because it's a path to Jannah as well. And of course, it's protected by the angels, so it's a blessing. Wherever angels are involved, the mercy of Allah and Allah's blessing is involved. As a general rule of thumb, our scholars tell us that wherever angels are involved in something, it involves Allah's mercy and His compassion and His blessings. So that's the first thing from the hadith. So, ilm, knowledge, is very, very important. It has its virtues, it has its excellences. Right, so what is this ilm then? What is this knowledge? What does ilm mean? What kind of knowledge is it that Allah will enable me, or Allah will set out a road for me to reach Jannah, to reach paradise? What is this type of ilm? I want to give you a great scholar in Islam. He was actually an orphan, rahimahullah. He was originally from Palestine, Ascalon or Asqalan. Yeah, that's the Arabic name. And the story goes that Imam Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani, that's his name. He traveled barefoot, an orphan, from Palestine, and ended up in Egypt to Al-Azhar University. I don't know if any of you heard that, Islamic University, one of the oldest university in the world. Maybe the Qarawiyyin as well, yeah, perhaps early, I'm not sure. But the oldest known university is Al-Azhar Sharif in Egypt. We walked away from Palestine, ended up in Egypt, and he became the greatest scholar of his time. He's known to have memorized between 500,000 to 800,000 hadith. And he was like a great jurist as well. Now he defines, Imam Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani He defines knowledge in the following. He defines what does knowledge mean here. And he tells us, وَالْمُرَادْ بِالْعِلْمِ, and what we mean by ilm or knowledge, العلم الشرعي, Islamic knowledge. علم الشرعي, Sharia knowledge. What is that? الذي يفيد معرفة ما يجب على المكلف من أمر دينه. This knowledge, that is Sharia knowledge, it is related to everything that we are supposed to know in our religion. So in Islam, there is a basic amount of knowledge we all have to know. We all have to know. If we don't, we're going to be sinful. What are they? And he says, في عبادته, in his worship, how you pray, how you fast, how you do hajj, how you pay the zakat, yeah, how you do your purification. ومعاملاته, and how you buy and sell. Everyone buys and sells. Buy a ticket, get on a train, you buy a sweet, crisp, lunch, go shopping, buy clothes. Everyone buys and deals in contracts. Who's got a mobile phone here? No one's got a mobile phone. That's shocking. I walked into a cave. Everyone's got a mobile phone or some kind of communication device. Yeah, and if most of you are probably on a contract, that's mu'amalat. We don't get things free. Yeah, no one's going to give you a free contract. Yeah, so you have to pay money for a contract to have a phone. That comes under in Islam what we call mu'amalat, your dealings. If you have a job, you don't just walk into a job. Someone gives you a job. You have to sign a contract. Even when you join school, you've got to sign a contract. When you get married, sign a contract. These are called mu'amalat. These are called dealings, transactions. So, knowledge, ilm al-shari'i, Islamic knowledge, involves knowing how to pray, your personal worship, knowing your personal dealings, wal-ilm billah, and having knowledge of Allah, wa sifatihi, and his attributes. وَمَا يَجِبُ مِنْ قِيَامِ بِأَمْرِهِ وَتَنْزِيهِهِ مِنَ النَّقَائِضِ. And we've got to know everything that Allah has commanded us to do. And we've got to know that Allah is above everything, that He has no faults. There's no deficiency in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَمُدَارُ ذَلِكَ عَلَى التَّفْسِيرِ وَالْحَدِيثِ وَالْفِقْهِ. And there are three subjects that you have to study in order to have Islamic knowledge. One, knowledge of the Quran, or tafsir, like explanations of the Quran. Second, al-hadith, knowledge of the Prophet's statements, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, yeah? So, and the last one is fiqh, Islamic law. What's halal, what's haram, how do I do this, how do I do ghusl, how do I do wudu, how do I pray, where do I put my hands, all that kind of stuff. Fiqh. So these three subjects. So knowledge is a sacred journey. It's a journey that Allah has protected through angels. It's a way that if we have a good intention to set out to learn Islamic knowledge, Allah will ensure that angels protect us along the way. So the knowledge that we're talking about here is Sharia knowledge. That's not to say Islam doesn't say we can't study non-Sharia knowledge. Islam doesn't say that it doesn't say just focus on Sharia knowledge, that's it. It doesn't say that. We need to learn whatever we need, like what they call dunyawi knowledge. Whatever we need to do to progress, to design things, to make things, to know the reality of things. Whatever is required for us to learn, we have to learn them. There's nothing wrong in learning those things. Maths, the sciences, biology, chemistry, physics. Yeah, I know most people don't like biology, chemistry, physics. Yeah, I'm a teacher. Most of my kids don't like that. They don't like maths, they don't like sciences, yeah? They like art and non-sciences. So maybe you guys are different, maybe you have science, I'm not too sure. But Islam doesn't stop us from learning these subjects. Okay, so knowledge then is very important in Islam. Especially al-ilm al-shari'i, Islamic knowledge. That involves ibadat, mu'amalat. Ibadat is what? And mu'amalat? Yeah, the things you do. Every day, your dealings. Islam, we don't see a difference. All of them require you to know and have some basic knowledge. So all of us in this room, Now, I remind myself first, before I remind you all, we must learn these two types of knowledge. If you have brothers or sisters who are knowledgeable, learn from them. If you have contact with ulama, learn from them. If you can get together and you yourselves can appoint someone who can teach you, learn. You have no choice. You have to learn it. Yeah, Islam doesn't want to leave us to be some dumb guys. We have to learn some basic things. We have to. No one's got a choice. Doesn't matter whether you're a student, you're an elderly. We all have to have basic knowledge of how we worship and how we deal with other people, whether in contracts or other things like that in society. Yeah. So, knowledge is very important in Islam, especially Islamic knowledge. But what's this knowledge for? What is this knowledge what am I supposed to do with this knowledge in the end? And I want to go through a couple of quotes of some great scholars in Islam, some great personalities, to break down, and hopefully we'll be a bit clearer what knowledge is supposed to serve us. What purpose is it supposed to have for me? Yeah, I don't know, maybe you've had discussions in school, those who are in school or college, that are miss or sir, why am I learning this? And what's this got to do with my life? Most students ask me maths. I'm not a maths teacher. I teach history, RE, and I teach critical thinking. So, but a lot of the times maths teacher gets asked, so why am I learning this? It's all just a waste of time. Because they don't see a purpose behind that knowledge that they're learning. So they just learn it for the exams to pass it and they're going to college or whatever it is, into university. But Islamic knowledge isn't like that. There's a purpose behind it, and I want to break it down for you. Okay. One of the greatest scholars ever in Islam is Imam Malik bin Anas. Has anyone heard of Imam Malik? Imam Dar al-Hijrah. He's got a title called Imam Dar al-Hijrah. He's the Imam of the land where all the Muslims migrated to. And where's the land where Muslims migrated to in masses? Medina Munawwara. I was going to say UK. Yeah. That's cool. But maybe soon, the way it's going, we're soon going to have like people saying, because Muslims are and very pious people are flocking to cities in Britain. You're starting to get Birmingham Sharif, Bradford Sharif. Maybe we're going to get Ilford Sharif. I don't know, yeah, maybe. You know, if like a holy man or a woman dies there, you know, it becomes a holy place, yeah. So, yeah, they went to Medina Munawwara. Medina Munawwara. So that's why he's called the Imam of the Darul Hijrah, the Imam of the land where all the Muslims migrated. Because Imam Malik lived in Medina. He lived in Medina. And he's one of the Imams to found which madhab? Which madhab follows him? The Maliki madhab. Does anyone know mainly where in the Islamic world that madhab is predominant? Other than West London? West Africa. Where else? North Africa. Yeah, pretty much all of North Africa. Pretty much all of it. And parts of Medina. Not only that, there's another European country where it was the whole madhab was in that country.
Spain.
Yeah, Spain, Portugal. Believe it or not, has anyone heard of the island of Ibiza? Yeah, of course. Did you know Ibiza was Maliki? It was under Islamic rule, under the Khilafah of the Islamic State, that adopted the Maliki madhab. So before Ibiza became a clubbing land, yeah, if you still, I'm going to say if you still go there, yeah, if you happen to accidentally be in Ibiza, right, there are mosques there, still to this day. All the Balearic Islands actually as well have mosques. And they have famous Muslim poetesses, lady poets were from these Spanish islands. So read up our history. Yeah, it was all Maliki, all Maliki. So Imam Malik was, one of the greatest scholars in Islam. He says, Al-hikmah wal-ilm nurun. Knowledge and wisdom, or wisdom and knowledge, is like a light. It's like a light. يهدي به الله من يشاء وليس كثرة رواية. Knowledge or wisdom isn't just learning and memorizing lots of information. But knowledge is like a light. It should be like a light that Allah, uses to guide people with. So the knowledge, imagine like you're in a dark road, suddenly you turn on the headlights with your torch, you know the path ahead of you. Knowledge is supposed to do that. It's supposed to shine for you, shine the road ahead for you. It's not supposed to just be memorizing stuff. Just memorizing it for the sake of memorizing it. And I'm going to come back to this point just shortly. So, al-hikmah wal-ilm nurun yahdi biha Allahu man yasha laysat kathratu riwayat. So, knowledge and wisdom is a light by which Allah guides people. The knowledge and wisdom must be a light for us. If we're not using the knowledge to help us guide us in life, and we just learn it just because we memorized it, that's not knowledge. That's not knowledge. So, taking Imam Malik's statement then, that's a good way to then take us into our third point. What is the purpose behind knowledge? What is the maqsad behind knowledge? What is it, this path, if I'm setting out on this path of knowledge, like I mentioned in the hadith at the beginning, what am I supposed to do with it? Why am I learning this knowledge? Another great scholar, who is a Maliki as well. Yeah, I'm going all Maliki tonight, yeah? Even though I'm Hanafi mainly, but I'm going Maliki tonight. So, another great Maliki scholar who was from Andalusia, in southern part of Spain, Imam Ash-Shatibi. Imam Ash-Shatibi. Very, very famous scholar. I'm going to give you two quotes from him, and that's a way to help us understand, because he summarizes it beautifully, what knowledge is supposed to be for us. He says, so now we've got a rough definition of what knowledge is. Knowledge is ilmu shara'i, that's related to learning about worship and our daily actions. So we all have to learn that. We have to learn about Allah and His attributes, how He's perfect. So we have to learn Aqeedah. And the three subjects that will help us in learning about these things is tafsir, explanation of the Quran, hadith, the statements of the Prophet, alayhi salatu wasalam, and thirdly fiqh, or Islamic law. Islamic law. So what does Imam Ash-Shatibi tell us about knowledge? He says, al-ilm wasilatun min al-wasail. He says, you should know, al-ilm wasilatun min al-wasail. Knowledge is just a means. It's just a means, a way to get towards something. ليس مقصودا لنفسه. Knowledge isn't sought. Knowledge isn't studied and learned for its own sake, just for the hell of it. It's a wasila min al-wasail. It's a way to get us somewhere. So min حيث النظر الشرعي, so in Islamic perspective, knowledge is a means. ليس مقصودا بنفسه. It's not studied just for the sake of it. إنما هو وسيلة إلى العمل. Knowledge, if we're going to learn Islamic knowledge, إنما هي وسيلة من العمل. It is a way that should take us to doing actions, to doing things. It's a way to get us to do actions. وكل ما ورد في فضل العلم فإنما هو ثابت للعلم من جهة ما هو مكلف بالعمل به. Everything that is good about knowledge, any Islamic knowledge that you learn, what makes it good? The whole point behind it is only good, and it only has a point if it takes you to doing actions. If it takes you to or leads you to do actions. So remember that point, first of all. That knowledge is just a means to take us somewhere. It's not studied for its own sake, just for academically, for the sake of it. Let's just do some academic gymnastics. That's not the purpose. It is to take us to ilm. Ilm is to take us to amal. Knowledge is to take us to action. So, everything that we need to know for ourselves is going to lead us to act. Otherwise, that knowledge, there's no point behind it. It's just information stuck in our heads. It's just information stuck in our heads. And one of the problems in our ummah today is not that we have a lack of knowledge or people with a lot of information. That's not our problem. I want to read you some stats published by Office of National Statistics as well as the Muslim Council of Britain. We've got registered near to about 3,000 mosques, and they're registered mosques. They're not what they call the masalla, where it's like a hall where you book to pray. Like a lot of us might pray Jummah in like a hall or something. It's not that. Actual mosques, near to 3,000. We've got approximately registered 6,500 imams. We've got about 6,500 registered imams in this country. Yeah? We've got thousands and thousands of web-based courses on Islam. Web-based courses. There's Islamic course everywhere these days, isn't it? Type in Islamic courses in Google and you see hundreds come up. And I'm just talking about the UK. 20% of Muslims are students. 20% of Muslims are students. There are 2,000 madrasas, registered madrasas in this country. There are 250,000 Muslim students. Majority of them attend the madrasas. And they count madrasa as like a Saturday, Sunday school as well. We've got a lot of Islamic channels. Islamic books are printed in their millions every year. In their millions. And English is a fast growing language now to study Islam. Now, Arabic books have been translated into English first before any other language. Before it used to be Arabic into Urdu, Arabic into Bengali, something like that. Arabic into Farsi. But now it's Arabic straight into English first. Even when I went to Bangladesh and I was asking for books translated from Arabic into Bengali or Urdu, they hadn't even been translated to Urdu yet. Translated to English. Knowledge is available. We've got fuqaha, great scholars. We've got loads of imams who have memorized the Quran, thousands of hadith. We're not short of knowledge. We're not short of ulama. We're not. Alhamdulillah, Allah has still kept, a host of ulama alive, men and women. The problem is, going back to Imam Malik's statement, is that the way Islam is taught and learned, the way we receive knowledge is like riwayah. It's just like information. How many of us have gone to like a Saturday or supplementary school and we learn our Arabic or Islam through sort of memorizing, not really through like thinking about it? How many of us sort of learn Islam in that way? Like we just got on Saturday, Sunday, got some licks, from the teacher, forgot it wrong. That's it, it's part of learning. Oh, well, get hit on the head, and then you correct yourself. Yeah, most of us got beats. Yeah, so that is how we will learn to memorize. Maybe we don't know Arabic language in the sense of how, like the grammar, what is a noun, a verb, how to speak it. But we learn the alphabet, right? To read the Quran. And like it's a milestone, like especially in the subcontinent, India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, where once you do Khatam al-Quran al-Sharif, it's a big thing, isn't it? You used to have a big meal and a feast. Yeah? Most parents still do that. There's nothing wrong with that. It's not a bid'ah, there's nothing wrong with that. But that was the extent of it. That was the extent of it. Where are you? I'm on the Sifara. I'm just gone. I went from the Qa'idah, yeah? Not Al-Qa'idah, but it's called Qa'idah. Yeah? That's what it's called. If the feds find out our book's called Qa'idah, they're going to start making links. Yeah? It's just the alphabet. They open it as the alphabet. Yeah? So you got the foundation, because Qa'idah means foundation, isn't it? So we're on the foundation. Then we go into the second bit, which is a bit more surahs, a bit lengthy ayat. Then you get onto the Quran. You graduate onto reading the Quran. That's the extent of our learning, isn't it? So we go from Surah Fatiha Sharifa all the way to Surah An-Nas. Once you do the Khatam, that's the big thing. MashaAllah, I've done my Islamic responsibility. My son and my daughter have done the Khatam of Quran. That's it. So we learn Islam in that way. We learn Islam informationally. I'm not saying that's the way our parents, our grandparents taught us. Most of us in that way. So that's the problem you see we're facing. Knowledge is delivered like a package. It's delivered to you, posted through your letterbox, bish bash bosh, it's done. But what is in that package? What comes out of that package? What it's supposed to be for me in my life? How am I supposed to apply it and solve problems? That's not how we're taught Islam. We're not taught Islam to say, right, here's Islam is like a manual for us. The Quran is a manual and the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sahbihi wasallam is a practical manual for us. So we've got to look at it for our solutions. So we don't study Islam in that way. We don't even study Islam in Islamic universities in that way. I can tell you, I went to Islamic university. Wallah, and I kid you not, all I did, I just memorized whatever the lecturer told me to memorize. And in my exam, whatever I memorized, I wrote it down. It could be right, it could be relevant to the question, I don't know. Somewhere in there is the answer. I sat there and memorized about 8, 9 books. That's what I did. Then the exam, whatever I could remember, I just wrote it down. I don't know the answer. Whatever's in my head, I wrote it down. The only reason why I passed most of the time is because somewhere was the answer. Yeah, that's the way we're taught. We weren't taught it in a way where, right, let's take this verse of the Quran. How would that solve a particular problem? When we look at poverty, how would the Quran look at poverty? How did Rasulullah tell us practically how to deal with poverty? How does poverty and zakat relate to each other? Oh, okay, all right. Don't really know. Don't know how zakat will eliminate poverty. We don't think of Islam in that way. Justice. How does Quran, what does Quran tell us about justice? How did Rasulullah practically implement justice? I don't know really thought about it. I just memorized the ayat on justice. You can see. So we're learning Islam not in a way where we're bringing solutions for people from the Quran and the Sunnah, because we're not taught Islam in that way. We're not taught Islam in a way that says, right, you see people homeless out there. There's people homeless in the streets of London. We're probably going to walk past a few when we go home today. People are on food rations, would you believe it? The elderly aren't going to get heating because they can't pay for it. Now, there are problems in society, they're real problems. Now, Islam's got a solution for each of these problems. No one should be homeless. Islam says no one should be homeless. No one should be paying extortionate amounts of money for their heating bills, electricity bills, water bills. No one should be no one should be at home starving. But what's the solution? What solution is Islam given for these things? Well, we haven't learned Islam in that way to be able to offer people the solution. Can you see, my dear brothers and sisters? That's one of the major problems. We've just learned Islam as information. Even to the extent where graduates who've come out of Islamic universities, whether Jamia Islamiyya in Medina Munawwara, Al-Azhar Sharif, Qarawiyyin, wherever, or the Darul Ulooms, the thousands of Darul Ulooms we've got, the madrasas we've got in this country, we're churning out young ulama every day. MashaAllah, that's a good thing. But when they come out, what happens? The books that I study, well, I don't know how we're going to solve this problem. Oh yeah, Sheikh, what do we do? My son's going through this problem, my daughter's going through this, my brother's going through this problem. What do we do? Society is telling us to go one way. What do we do? Oh, I don't know. I just read the hadith when I was in madrasa. I didn't really do anything else. I did Khatam al-Bukhari Sharif, Tirmidhi Sharif. I read these hadith books, which is a blessing in reading them, but did you take the solutions that are in these hadiths? We don't learn Islam in that way. So, our ulama, of course they're knowledgeable. They can give us expert advice on how to pray. They can give you deep advice on, exactly what to do when it comes to your prayer, your fasting, what breaks it, what doesn't, all these intricate details. But when it comes to our reality that we live in, whether in the UK or around the world, how many of our ulama can come forward and say, right, Islam, I know the solution Islam has given us to solve these problems. To solve the problem of occupation. I think that was your fourth talk, was it last week? There's a solution for that. The problem in Palestine. There's an Islamic solution from it, a solution from Quran and Sunnah. Every single issue we see in the world, there's a solution from Quran and Sunnah. Whether they're personal issues, domestic issues, community issues, national issues, global issues. So that's the first main point that I wanted to make. So Imam Shatibi, rahimahullah, he says, ilm is a means, knowledge is a means to take it to action. Then he explains this further. He says, al-ilm, الذي هو العلم المعتبر شرعا أعني الذي مدح الله ورسوله أهله على الإطلاق هو العلم الباعث على العمل. Again he repeats it, that the knowledge that is beneficial in Islam, that is the only knowledge that is recognized in Sharia, is knowledge that is leading us to action, to do things. الذي لا يخلى صاحبه جاريا مع هواه كيفما كان. This bit is beautiful. Then he says, no one is allowed to leave themselves to decide however they want what they think is right. They're not allowed to follow their own desires. They're not allowed to follow their own desires. Now, I'm not sure, was one of your talks related to, related to what desire, shahawat, the pressures in society? You've had a previous talk on that. Especially, we have to know and understand that in Islam we're not allowed to do whatever we feel is right. See, the secular liberal society that we live in tells us, so you do whatever you feel is right. Follow your heart, that kind of thing. If it's right for you, you feel it's right, you do it. You run with it. You follow what you think is right or wrong. Or what your group feels is right or wrong. Or what society feels is right or wrong. Ilm in Sharia can't lead us to that. Can't lead us to that. It can't be based on how we follow our own desires and our whims and our own emotions. And then he says, بل هو المقيد لصاحب بمقتداه. Everyone in Islam is required or is restricted by what Islam tells us. The requirements of Islam. We can't follow our own nafs, our own desires and passions, what we feel is right. We are muqayyad, we are restricted by the requirements of Islam. This is why you may have heard of a hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam that adunya sijnul mu'min wa jannatul kafir. The world is the disbeliever's paradise. He's going to roll in it. It's for him. It's his Jannah. He could do what he wants. Yeah? Well, Sijnul Mu'min wa Jannatul Kafir. It's a prison for the believer though. But a prison in what sense? Are we all in jail now? We're not all in jail. It doesn't mean literal. It means that we have to live in the world restricted by certain things, as though we're like in a prison. That restriction is the Sharia. The commands of Allah and the prohibitions of Allah. Because we can't follow our own whims and desires. We are restricted by what Allah and His Messenger have told us. Then he says, الحامل له على قوانينه طوعا وكرها. Whether we like it or not, we have to follow the qawaneen, the laws of Islam. Whether we like it or not. Once we submit to Islam, we have no choice in following the commands of Allah. When Allah and His Messenger have decided something, the believers have no choice after that. إِذَا قَضَى اللَّهُ وَرَسُولُهُ أَمْرًا. Whenever Allah and His Messenger have decided a matter, there's no khira, there's no choice in this now. We have to submit to it. طَوْهًا وَقَرْهًا, whether we like it or not. So, what does that mean then? That means knowledge then has to be linked to action. It's not enough to get a madrasa certificate or Islamic studies certificate from Islamic University. It's not enough if I'm not going to act on what I know. I have to act on what I know. I can't act however I want because I have to follow the rules of the Sharia, the rubrics of the Sharia. I can't make up whatever I want about Islam. I can't do that. I'm not the owner of the religion, Allah is. Allah has decided what He wants from the religion. So, we have no choice but to follow the qawaneen, the laws of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now the question is, my dear brothers and sisters, this knowledge then, we don't have a lack of knowledge. We have a lack of transferring this knowledge into action. Transferring this knowledge into action so we bring it about in our lives. Now one of the major problems is today, anywhere in the world, Islam remains in some kind of practical way on an individual basis. But Islam has not been translated practically into life in all areas. So the knowledge that we have about Islam, it may translate into some individual actions that we have and maybe some communal actions in Muslim countries. But it's not, there's no amal of Islam in all areas of life. There's no amal of Islam, there's no practice of Islam in all areas of life. We're not, once we've got knowledge of Islam, are we submitting to what that knowledge is telling us to do? Are we submitting to that knowledge? Are we following it? Are we obeying it? Are we implementing it in our lives? The question then we need to ask ourselves is, if I've got learned knowledge of Islam, has that knowledge translated into action? Am I doing Islam? Am I doing Islam? Because many times we hear, yeah, I'm just a student of knowledge. Alhamdulillah, yeah, we're all students of knowledge. How much are you going to be learning Islam? How much are you going to be doing Islam? How much of Islam are you going to implement? Now Islam hasn't just come to be implemented in our individual lives. It has to be implemented in all aspects of life. Now, if our knowledge doesn't lead us to that, we're in trouble. If our knowledge doesn't lead us to understanding how Islam is supposed to be learned in a way that we're supposed to act on it and bring it about in our lives as individuals, as a community, as a society, if we don't understand Islam in that way, then we've really not understood Islam. We've really not understood Islam. If we only think that Islam is just, I learn some knowledge of Islam just to practice on myself a bit, as long as I'm wearing some Islamic thawb, wearing a hat, go to some Islamic talks, maybe even go to a halal chicken shop, yeah? That's the extent of my Islamic life. Then there's something seriously wrong about that. That's not what knowledge should take us to. Knowledge should take us to acting on what Allah and His messengers command us to do, i.e. the requirements of the Sharia. Individually in our lives and as a society, as a community, we are required to live by Islam practically in that way. At the moment, my dear brothers and sisters, we're not living Islam like that. You point to a society and tell me they're living Islam practically in the way it's supposed to be lived. So what's all that knowledge doing? What's all these Islamic madrasas there in our Muslim lands? All these Islamic universities, what are they doing then? We're bringing out alims every year, alhamdulillah. We're bringing out Islamic graduates. We're bringing out sheikhs every year. We haven't got a knowledge problem. There's no knowledge shortage. There's no publication shortage. There's no shortage of Islamic teachers. There's no shortage of Islamic mosque, alhamdulillah. There's no shortage of Islamic paraphernalia, like, Islamic gear. Hats, thawbs, tasbih, leather socks. We've got no shortage of these things. There's no shortage of these. We have a shortage of Islam being practically lived. It's not practically lived. If it's not practically lived, then either we've misunderstood what knowledge is or misunderstood what Islam is. This is the biggest issue facing us, my dear brothers and sisters. The fact that Islam is practically absent from life's affairs. It's practically absent from life's affairs. What I mean by that is, it's not in every place it's supposed to be. Where's Islam practically applied in the marketplace? Or practically lived in the marketplace? Where's Islam practically lived in schools? Where's Islam practically lived in the economy? Where's Islam practically lived in the judiciary, the courts? Where is Islam practically lived in society? Where is it? It's nowhere. It's not there. It's not there. Because the system that Allah has given us to live with is absent. So our knowledge. We shouldn't learn Islamic knowledge, Imam Shatibi is telling us, just for the sake of learning knowledge. Yeah, I'm going on a course, bro. 6-week course or whatever it is, and then that's it. Yeah, but what knowledge are you bringing away from this course? Is that knowledge leading you to act on what you know, so you can bring about Islam individually in your life, and more importantly, to help to bring it about in society? That's the purpose behind knowledge. Lead to action. Lead to action. It can't just be knowledge that's information that sticks in our head. And it can't just be knowledge about Islam that just leads me to just being an individualistic Muslim. Like I said, as long as I'm buying halal food, wearing Islamic clothes, listening to Islamic nasheeds, that's my Islamic culture. That's not enough. That's not enough. That's not the horizon of living Islamically. That's not the horizon of living Islamically. We have to live by all the requirements of Islam in every area of our life. And that is absent. That is absent because the systems of Allah are absent. So when we learn knowledge, next time you enroll on a course, my dear brothers and sisters, next time you study an Islamic text or something like that, do ask your teacher, so how can we practically benefit from this? See how many of your teachers give you your answer, how that practically is relevant for your life. Because if it's not leading you to action, then that's not beneficial knowledge. If it's not leading you to bring Islam into your life, practically, then there's something that needs to be clarified there. Something that needs to be clarified. So as Muslims, my dear brothers and sisters, we have to learn knowledge. Nobody's excused. No one's off the hook. Make a sincere intention to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala after today that you're going to go out and seek Islamic knowledge, ilmu shari'i. Learn your basic Islamic knowledge. Make that niyyah, make that intention that you're going to do that. And you're going to be diligent in it, and you're going to ask Allah to give you tawfiq in it, and I as well. That you're going to learn Islam, learn Islamic knowledge with a view to obviously practicing it, but with a view to also understanding that I need to be someone who not only brings Islam individually into my life, but practically into society. So I've got to work towards making sure that happens. I've got to work towards making sure that happens. So I learn my Islamic knowledge, so it leads me to act on what I know, so I can practically apply Islam on my individual life. But I also need to understand Islam needs to be practically applied, not only on an individual level, but a social level, economic, political, judicial, every aspect of life. But that's absent. That's absent. That reality is absent. So I need to now work towards helping to bring about that situation so Islam is practically lived in life, and it doesn't, learning Islam or Islam doesn't just remain as a kind of individualistic academic thing. So I'll end it there. So I hope maybe there's some time for Q&A. If the brothers or sisters have any questions or comments.
Jazakallah khair, Brother Saf. Alhamdulillah, Brother Saf has covered a few points about the topic of knowledge, and we've got maybe 10-15 minutes of question and answer time, inshallah. So there's an opportunity for the brothers and sisters to maybe potentially ask their questions. The few points that were covered before I take the question were the importance of knowledge. And Brother Saf, he mentioned at the beginning of his circle that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He will make a path for the believer who sets out to actually learn knowledge, and that this path is protected by the malaika. And generally, Brother Saf mentioned that the rule of thumb is that anything that's associated with the malaika is also linked to mercy and barakah. So that's something that we should take into consideration. And the second point that is mentioned is that ilm and knowledge is not sought for its own self. Rather, knowledge is sought for a reason. And that is to fulfill your Islamic obligations, but more fundamentally to act as well. To actually act and do something with it. And then he gave many examples of as well of the reality that we live in. He mentioned some of the statistics of the institutions that we have available, the imams that we have available. So Brother Saf highlighted that the problem isn't necessarily the lack of knowledge. The knowledge is available. Within this social media generation and Google generation, I think Google is probably referenced more than Sahih Bukhari. So because we have a lot of access to knowledge, the problem isn't with this aspect of it. The problem is, how do people actually take this knowledge and implement it? And before I open up the question and answer session, I just want to mention a quick example of Aisha radiallahu anha. And Aisha radiallahu anha, as we all know, she was one of the great muhaddithin of the ummah. She was one of the largest number of narrations of the Prophet ﷺ come from her. And one of I believe the tabi'in, he went to Aisha radiallahu anha, and he was asking her questions about the Prophet ﷺ's life and what was he like, what was he doing. And every day Aisha radiallahu anha, she would teach him a hadith, a saying of the Prophet ﷺ. So the first day went, the second day went, the third day went, the fourth day. After 10 days, he kept coming back for another hadith. So he said, teach me something else, teach me something else. And on the 10th day, Aisha radiallahu anha said to the tabi, she said, what have you done with the other 10 narrations that I've given you? And he's like, I've just memorized it. And I just kept it in my books. And she said, look, it's better that you go back, you consolidate what you've learned, and then you come back afterwards. Otherwise, what I teach you will become a burden for you and will be a proof against you on Yawm al-Qiyamah. It will become a proof against you on Yawm al-Qiyamah if you don't act on it. So even her advice was, the knowledge that you're learning, implement it. Yeah? Even if it's little, implement that knowledge and then go forward. So with that in mind, brothers and sisters, I'll open up the panel up for questions. I know Saifi had his hand up, and then Brother Shuhur inshallah will take the questions.
No, Muslims have been here for good what? 40, 50 years here. And a lot of the ulama are now actually coming out and saying that we need to practically implement Islam, like you were saying. But I have a feeling that they're talking about something else. They're talking about the practical manifestation of Islam in these secular liberal institutions, getting involved in and try campaigning with these people, whether it be in parliament or whatnot. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, I mean, if it's always best to ask someone what they mean by when they say practically apply Islam in life. Yeah, for many people, it means many different things. As you mentioned, for some people, practically living by Islam just might mean, like I said, well, bro, I've got got halal insurance. My kids go to Islamic school. I live in an Islamic area in East London. Yeah. What more do you want? That I'm living an Islamic life. Yeah. Used to be a thug life, now I live Islamic life. Yeah. Some people, that's living Islam practically, isn't it? But for some, that's how they look at it. For some, living Islam or making Islam practically applied is through the system that they live in now. Currently, it could be this country or any country. As long as I can get Islam through influencing the government, that to me, I'm practically living by Islam. If I can pass Islamic laws through the government, if I can influence or lobby to get Islamic laws through. For some people, they look at it like that. And what I'm saying is that when we say we want to live practically by Islam, I mean we live by the Sharia of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I live by all the laws of Allah. Not just 10%, 20% of it, or just marriage laws from Islam, or inheritance laws, or some transactions laws. No, we're talking about all the laws that make up the systems of Islam. All of that implemented. That's what I mean. And so living practically by Islam means to live under Islam. And living under Islam means living under the Sharia of Islam. Living under the Sharia of Islam means all of the Sharia. All of the Sharia. So that's what I mean by practically. So when I was saying it in my talk that Islam is absent from all these different areas of life, the Islamic systems are nowhere to be seen in all the areas of life. Even if it is seen in one area of life, it's still not enough. It has to be all of Islam as a package. I can't pick and choose from Islam. You can't pick and choose from Islam what you want to follow. As Imam Shatibi tells us, we are muqayyad. We are restricted by all the requirements of Islam. All of the requirements. When we signed up, when we said the Shahada, all of us said it when we were disembodied souls. We all made the contract with Allah. And Allah tells us about that in the Quran. Alastu bi rabbikum. Am I not your Lord? Bala shahidna. All of us, we said it. Allah, yes indeed you are. We bear witness. We all made a contract to Allah that we will worship Him and submit to Him and follow Him and His commands. It's just that the dunya makes us forget that contract. Mithaq. The dunya makes us forget it. So, that's what I mean by living Islam practically. Not through an existing government, not in an individualistic way. I mean, it's what we call radical way. Yeah? I completely overhaul everything the way it is and have it transplanted with all of Islam. That's what I mean. Living by all of Islam. Living by all the requirements of Islam. So that is the biggest issue Muslims are facing at the moment. That is our biggest issue as a ummah. As a ummah. That as a ummah globally, as a nation, our biggest sort of catastrophe is that. The fact that we're not living under Islam in a natural way. Believe it or not, we're living in a very unnatural way as Muslims. We're fish out of water.
And just before I take the second question from Shuhur, one of the things I would maybe add to that question is, a lot of you, I know a lot of the members of the audience are working in Barclays Bank. We have a big group from Barclays Bank working with the audience. Now, one of the things you'll realize in terms of maybe to highlight my brother Saf's point is, So, I mean, I went into Barclays Bank to open up a business account. And I told them I don't want any interest on my business account. So I signed up to all of the paperwork and I was like, okay, by the way, final, and I was speaking to a Muslim, by the way. Actually, initially I wasn't speaking to a Muslim. It was like, I think, a Hindu guy there. And I was like to him, look, by the way, the final condition is that I don't want any interest on in my bank account. He was like, he didn't understand. He's like, what do you mean you don't want any interest? I said, I don't want any interest in my account. I'm a Muslim. I'm not allowed to take interest. And then he's like, he doesn't understand why I don't want interest. I said, look, I don't want your free money. What part of that don't you understand? And he's like, no, but you have to have interest. I said, I don't want your free money. I'm not allowed to take your religion. Like I said, religiously, I'm not allowed to take it. Then he gives me advice. The Indian guy says to me, I just take it and give it to charity. I was like, subhanallah, the Indian guy's giving me fatwa what to do with riba, yeah? But this is the extent, even if you wanted to live an Islamic life, even if you wanted to, at the end I just had to walk out. I was like, look, you can't provide me with the service that I need. So the issue is that even in these kind of issues and societal issues, even if you tried your hardest, there are just certain things that are outside your capability that you can't live Islamically. And I think what Brother Asaf is saying is that to really live under an Islamic system, the Khilafah system, it's when all of the rules of Islam are emanated from the Quran and the Sunnah. Whereas we can practically see that this society doesn't do that. It doesn't do that. Even in your basic transactions, you will see that doesn't allow you to do that. So that's one of the things to maybe take into consideration. When we say systematic change, we're talking about all of these institutions of economics, social, political, ruling. All of these things have to be Islamic. That's what we're doing. Inshallah. Brother Shuhud, and then we'll Brother Firdaus' hand up as well.
Really beneficial. Just a question on basically what the brother asked before, but more to the point that we grow up here, going through primary school, secondary school, obviously after college and university, and it's really like the Christmas period has just gone. Yeah, and you're talking about knowledge that would lead us somewhere, and that we can practically implement in our whole lives, and that takes a lot of thinking and comprehensive learning and so on. But at the same time, we're learning a very, very comprehensive culture from our schooling process and from society around us. I mean, at work, you're inviting me to Christmas parties and saying, don't worry, we're just going to a pub and drinking, as if they're completely illiterate of how Muslims live. And at the same time, a lot of Muslims are in that situation, having to deal with that, compromising in most situations. But considering this overwhelming tide against the Muslim community, and at the same time with the onslaught, media onslaught against the Islamic system, saying how impractical it is, what would you advise for the Muslims to practically learn Islam in a practical way?
I mean, this is a very tough question. I think your first talk was on Islamic values being under attack and things like that. So I mean, it's not just our system is pressurizing us to live a certain way, because this country is going to have laws, and it's going to get people to conform to its own values. It's just natural. This country is going to get you to conform to a sort of the liberal, a secular sort of outlook in life. And everywhere you go, you're going to be reminded of that. But they're not just doing that, they're also attacking Islamic values. So perhaps 20 years ago, it wasn't overtly attacking Islam the way it's done now. They're still attacking Islam, but now, it's open season now. Not only are you pressurized to live a certain way, you're also pressurized to give a response about why you believe what you believe and the values you hold. Everything Islamic is under scrutiny, is under an autopsy, is under attack. Nothing about Islam is not being left unturned. Everything has been scrutinized about religion. Even something benign as a beard. So what does a beard symbolize for you? What's that flag? What's the ISIS flag? Daesh flag, yeah? No, they call it. Same thing, bro. Yeah, it's ISIS and Daesh. But no, it's not ISIS flag. Yeah? Got to give an answer to that. Black and white is in an ISIS colour. Everything, isn't that what ISIS wear? So not only that, isn't Islam, barbaric against women? Isn't Islam backwards? Isn't Islam medieval? Why do you have to pray? Isn't that a bit tough? Why do you have to fast? Isn't that harming your body? Blah, blah. It's all everywhere we go. Not only then are we pressurized to follow, adopt and follow a certain way of life, but we're pressurized into abandoning our own values and our own beliefs. So we're being attacked in a two-pronged way. The first thing, I mean, some practical things that we can do, immediately practical things, you got to know what your company is. Who you keeping company with. Who you hanging around with. You know, our folks are right. You know, we got beats for who you hanging around with that shaitan for, that naughty boy. You know, mum and dad were right. You know they're right. You deserve that smack round here. You didn't listen to mum and dad. Why? Company. Who are you hanging around with? It's a legitimate question, even more so now. Are we hanging around with people? Are we spending time with people? Are we relaxing with people who have a consideration for the akhirah? That's the first thing. Their consideration is the akhirah. When you're around them, you know, you're not going to be wasting your time talking about nothing that will benefit you. I'm not saying can't have fun, Islam, you have to look sad. I'm not saying that, brothers. Maybe how Islam deals with, you know, relaxation time, maybe another talk, you know, we can deal with. But what I'm saying is that first and foremost, who's your sahib? Who's your companion? Who's your companion? Ask yourself, where's my companion taking me? Where's my friend taking me? Is he taking me to somewhere safe for my hereafter? Is he imbibing me with, you know, sort of Islamic ideas, values? Is he giving me confidence in my religion? Do I feel good around him? Do I feel safe around him when it comes to my religion? Does he remind me of the things that I need to do? If you're hanging around people like that, that's a good thing. That's the kind of company we should be keeping. Brother, let's catch the Jama'ah in the mosque. Well, if we can't, let's pray together here. Oh, should we sign up this course? Should we go to this talk? Do you want to meet the Sheikh? People are reminding us of the hereafter and anything that draws us nearer to Allah and makes our akhirah more safer. So that's the first thing. Who are we hanging around with? Second thing is, we've got to learn knowledge, Islamic knowledge. Now, I talked about learning Islamic knowledge, like what is halal, what is haram, how to pray, how to fast, you know, rulings related to clothing, dress, eating, drinking, all your personal ibadat, your personal actions. You need to know the integrals, the basics of that. So find a brother or a sister or a sheikh or someone who can teach you these. Sign up, learn. If you have to pay money, put money together, brothers, you know, pay that person. If that person gives it for free, alhamdulillah, go. Make the intention, learn. So Islamic knowledge in that sense. The third type of Islamic knowledge to learn, I would say, is you can't expect to breeze through life, yeah, no one's going to question your faith. You can't walk through life thinking, yeah, ain't going to question, John ain't going to question me, you know, mate. Yeah, he's your mate. When Ramadan comes along, or you get, or the Hajj time comes along, why are these Hajj people getting crushed? How come you don't have to wear, like, you know, a towel around your waist, like the Greeks? How come you don't, you know, have to fast and starve? John is going to ask these things, man. He's going to ask. And then you got to think, right, with wisdom, right? John, bro, let me explain. Yeah, this is why we do it. Islam teaches us this. Or how come, you know, how come your sister's covering all of a sudden? Last year she weren't, suddenly now she's covering. Yeah? How come, you know, I saw your aunt or your mum, she's veiled. What's all that? He has a right to ask. It's in his country. It's in his society. It's in his community. Yeah, so we've got to learn how to then articulate Islam in a way that was with wisdom and argumentation, with beautiful words, wisdom and argumentation. So it means that, you know, we might have to get people who can teach us these things, who can defend and not defend. I don't like that in that sense, but to articulate Islam authentically. That look, this is why I pray, or this is why I do these actions. This is why our mothers and our sisters, they wear this type of clothing. Look, this is why in Islam we consider this wrong. This is why we consider this evil. This is why we consider it morally wrong. We have to be able to give an account of our faith. We have to be ready to do apologetics. Our ulama, this was part of the syllabus before, by the way. How to articulate Islam in an intellectual way and to give arguments for the Islamic position. So it means we have to do that. That's going to mean investing time, energy, getting together, being serious, you know, and so it's not going to be easy. It's tough. So I would say do these three things immediately, as quickly as you can. You know, slowly by slowly change your company. If you think your company isn't a company that is remind you of the akhirah, increasing love for the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, increasing love for Allah, love for the Sahaba, love for the Salihun, the pious people, love for the ulama, love for learning, love for doing good actions. If your company isn't like that, start to rethink it. I'm not saying be nasty, just say, look, I'm not going to hang around as much with anyone like I used to. I'm being serious about this thing, about my deen now, and I want to stay firm on it. Come and help me. Let's do it together. Hang around people who are going to remind you of the deen, that's first and foremost. Second, learn your basic obligations. You've got obligations to your parents. If you're married, you've got obligations to your spouse. You've got children, you've got obligations to your children. Yeah? You've got obligations to your brothers and sisters. You've got obligations to your neighbours. You've got obligations to know how to clean yourself, how to pray, how to fast, how to give zakat for those of us who are eligible to zakat. If you're buying and selling, you have to know all these things. Thirdly, knowledge related to how am I going to articulate Islam in a very cogent way, a very effective way, very intellectual way, with wisdom. Yeah? Our beliefs are under attack. Let's make no, and our laws and our ideas are under attack. You can't be an ostrich. I can't be an ostrich, stick my head up, I was going to all blow over. Some of our ulama do that. But don't worry, let's lock our mosque door. As long as we've got a mosque, we're teaching our kids Saturday and Sunday. Yeah? It's going to blow over. The storm's going to blow over. It happens. No. One day they're going to open that mosque and come in and see what you're doing in that mosque. Oh, what, you got a barrier here? We're segregating men and women. Oh, so women second class now, is it? You've got to sit away from men. You have to learn how to articulate a response. Every aspect of being a Muslim is under scrutiny. And don't think that the less I look Islamic, the less I talk Islamic, I'm going to be safe. There are many, many Islamic scholars who are part of the system, who are part of Liberal Democrats, Labour, Conservative, yeah, believe it or not. They don't get visas to go to other countries. You don't get it, mate, because you've got a Muslim name. There's still something Islamic about you that's going to stop someone, and even from stopping you from having your rights, because you're Muslim. Doesn't matter if you look like your next door neighbour who's a non-Muslim, or you talk like him, eat the same food as him. That's not enough. The fact that you're Muslim, that alone is sufficient for you to be under attack and scrutiny. So my dear brothers and sisters, there's no way out. There's no way out. So it means now, we gotta start doing some, Islamic training. We'll do some Islamic training. Yeah? We've got intellectual training is what I'm talking about. In case someone just popped their head and goes, training! Youth talk, training. And I was like, no, in case anyone by the doors, listening. No, what I mean by, intellectual training. But what I would say at the same time, my dear brothers and sisters, this is a reminder, firstly and foremost to myself. In this climate of being under attack, under pressure, we're in a pressure cooker in the society. Our internal development, right? Our spirituality, our internal development has got to be in tandem with our intellectual development. If I can rattle off these arguments, I can respond to this reporter or that guy or this philosopher, but inside I've got no connection to Allah and His Messenger. Spiritually I'm dead. I'm not helping my cause. That's not going to save me in the hereafter. I have to have a heart or a nafs, a soul that is in submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So I'm going to be going through mujahadatun nafs. I'm going to be going through a struggle with myself. Why? Because as soon as I step outside in that society is telling me to go the way to follow my desires. But then my religion is telling me, no, you are a slave to Allah, you have to submit to Allah. And then there's that tussle now. There's that jihadun nafs. Because it's a sahih hadith where Rasulullah said, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, al-mujahidu alladhi jahada nafsahu fi ta'atillah. The mujahid, one of the types of mujahid, the one who struggles in the way of Allah, is the one who fights his own nafs in obedience, in getting it to obey Allah. But we live in a secular liberal society that's telling us, don't obey God. You obey God, you're your own master. You follow what you feel is right. You follow your own mind, your desires. Yeah, so these four things then I would say. One, check who you're hanging hanging around with? 2, are you learning Islamic, your basic fard knowledge, your obligatory knowledge? 3, are you learning Islam intellectually in a way you can articulate and be confident in yourself to give a response for Islam and stand up for Islam? Stand up for Islam. And 4, are you internally developing yourself, building your character, building the strength, building your spirituality, building your connection with Allah? All of these have to be in tandem. All of these have to be in tandem. Wallahu a'lam. I mean, there are probably more others, but just these 4 immediately come to mind.
Jazakallah khair, inshallah. We are running out. We have actually run out of time, inshallah. But what we're going to do is just a quick reminder that again next Friday the circle starts at 8 o'clock, inshallah. So please turn up on time. We try to be here at around 8 o'clock so we can start on time. My last brother have to inshallah end with a dua and then we can lead inshallah.
Allahumma ameen. ربنا ظلمنا أنفسنا وإن لم تغفر لنا وترحمنا لنكونن من الخاسرين. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم بارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم اغفر للمسلمين والمسلمات والمؤمنين والمؤمنات الأحياء منهم والأموات إنك قريب مجيب الدعوات. اللهم انصر الإسلام والمسلمين. اللهم انصر الإسلام والمسلمين. اللهم انصر الإسلام والمسلمين في هذا البلد وفي بلدان غربية يا رب العالمين. اللهم افرغ علينا صبرا وثبت أقدامنا وانصرنا على القوم الكافرين بفضل سبحانك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. Sorry, I went over time.